Good evening. The time is now 6:09, and we are going to commence our Brooklyn Borough Board meeting and public hearing for January 7th, 2024. Happy New Year, everyone. Are you guys happy to see me as I'm happy to see you? I see two people. We're going to start with the roll. Ms. Church, can you go ahead?
Hello? Yeah. All right. Good evening and Happy New Year. We'll start the roll call with the community boards. Community Board 1. Community Board 2 sent excuses. Community Board 3. Community Board 4. Thank you. Community Board 5. Community Board 6. Name? Rebecca. Thank you. Community Board 7. Thank you. Community Board 8. Thank you. Community Board 9. Thank you. Community Board 10 sent their excuses. Community Board 11 sent excuses. Community Board 12. Community Board 13. Community Board 14. Community Board 15 sent excuses. Community Board 16. Community Board 17. Community Board 18. Council members. When I call the representative's name, if you, the designee, will please state your name so we know who's representing. Ressler, District 33. Thank you. District 34, Gutierrez. District 35, Hudson. Thank you. District 36, Ose. Thank you, May. District 37, Nurse. District 38, Aviles. District 39, Hanif. District 40, Joseph. District 41, Millie. Oh. Didn't see you. District 42, Banks. District 43, Zwang. District 44, Yeager. District 45, Louis. District 46, Narcisse. District 47, Brannan. District 48, Bernikov. Hi, Sasha. District 49, Carr. Borough President's Office. We're President. Have a forum.
Okay, so we're going to move to the approval of the agenda. We extend our apologies, but does everyone have the new and corrected agenda? Yes, okay. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda for tonight? Thank you. Do we have a second? Thank you. Are there any objections to the approval of the agenda for tonight's meeting? Seeing none, we have also circulated the minutes for our December 3rd, 2024 Borough Board meeting. Do we have any corrections to the minutes? Any discussion on the minutes? Fred? 1 second. Microphone. Sorry, mine.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. At the end of last month's meeting, I believe that there was some discussion and a vote was taken by the Borough Board to publish the attendance records for the year. I don't see that reflected. If we could have that added to the minutes. Additionally, there was supposed to be a report generated for this month. If we could have that reflected as part of that.
Can you repeat the last thing?
There was supposed to be a report generated, so that was part
Oh,
of the minute.
correct. Is there a second for that addition on the minutes? Okay, I have a second. Is anyone opposed to that addition? Is there any further comment or correction on the minutes? Okay. Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes with Chairperson Baptiste's amendment to include the vote for the attendance records and including the request for that report? Ooh, I'm going to give it to Witherspoon first. Then I have a second from Pena. That was good. Are there any objections to the approval of the minutes, including the amendment? Is that an objection or a discussion?
It's an objection, but with clarifications in regards to, I guess it was the voting process on the vote that was on there. Is that what we're inquiring about? Which was used to tally the yes vote in regards to the park adjacent. Is that what we're inquiring about on the agenda? Because I know that there was people saying that how can a council that doesn't represent that area vote on that specific proposal? And I have a copy of the city charter with me, and it says the borough board consists of the borough president as the chair and all council member for the board and the chairs of all community board in the borough who may vote only on the matter directly affecting their community board. So I know that council that doesn't represent that area voted on a specific vote that implied. I know that there was a board member here saying, why couldn't we vote on it? So maybe we need to get some clarification on that. And I just want to, for the record, piggyback on I have copies of, so I left them home, of the council that voted on this that doesn't affect that area. So I'm just confused and I wanted some clarification. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to proceed with the minutes first, and then I will address your concern. So recording for the record that that was not an objection to the minutes, but a question for clarification on the vote. Do you have an objection on the minutes, or does anyone else have an objection on the minutes? Okay, seeing none, the minutes are for our December 3rd meeting are approved. And I'm going to speak to the portion of the charter that you read. So it's the first paragraph of section 85 of the New York Charter. And this is the penultimate sentence, the second to last sentence. The borough president, the council members from the borough, and the chairperson of the community boards in the borough shall be voting members of the borough board, but a member from a community board shall vote only on issues that directly affect the community district represented by such member. So that is the reason why the community board chairpersons are only permitted to vote on matters dealing with their district because of that latter part that says, but a member from a community board shall vote. This is not something we created. This is something that's in the law. And I do also want to point out that council members often vote on things that affect the city. They are the lawmakers under the charter for the city. And so their purview is citywide, no matter what their district is. But according to this law, but community board shall vote only on issues that directly affect their board. So if your board is not adjacent to an issue, if it doesn't touch your district, that is why those boards are not voting on those. This is not the first time that we've done that. We've had 3 Prospect Park Alliance applications last year. Those resolutions were circulated. We can circulate them again. My predecessor did this. We're doing it. It's in the New York Charter. So it's not something that we created. We're always happy to explain these things, but a community board shall vote. So that is the reason. Are there any other questions or comments related to this? Chair Pena and then Chair Betts.
Good evening, Julio Pena. I just wanted to add, thank you for that clarification. I did not know that was in the New York City Charter. I thought that was our bylaws. I would just encourage folks, if they disagree with that, the Mayor's Charter Revision Commission just started meeting today and will begin public sessions, and that would be a wonderful topic to submit for consideration.
Thank you very much. Chair Baptiste. Sorry, Martin.
Thank you very much for that clarification as well. But it does lead to me for another question, and perhaps not for us to discuss today, but another time. I would think that there are certain areas that by definition would touch all of Brooklyn. Like, for example, if we're voting on Prospect Park, it's not just the adjacent boards. That is a citywide, a borough-wide, citywide thing. So I would think that in those kinds of instances, it would be something that all the boards would vote on, because to some extent, we are all affected by what happens in Prospect Park. Again, not something for, for us for this vote, but I think maybe something that we want to consider as we go forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other points related to that question? Okay. We're going to move on. As you know, this is a public hearing, so we do have a presentation. And so we have New Neighborhood Tree Planning Initiative with Arminio Martinez. Oh, it's not in the notes?
No.
I'm so sorry.
Sorry.
Yes, you can take the podium and please introduce yourself. My apologies for not having the proper presence here.
Good evening. Can you all hear me? Should I make this a little closer? How's that? Better?
Thank you.
Cool. Okay, for the record, my name is Neves Strauss. I am the Director of Tree Planting for the Parks Department. I am not Herminio Martinez, who is a wonderful human being, but is not with us tonight. Okay. Please bear with me for just 1 second as I just pull up a couple things. Just get my pen here. So, this evening, I am going to present to you briefly on a new approach to tree planting. You may know that the Parks Department plants thousands of trees across the city each year, and we are modifying the strategy that we take and our approach, and we have been going around to all sorts of stakeholders, partners and community stakeholders, yourselves included, talking about what this initiative entails. So that's what I'll do tonight. So, but before we begin, I think it's important to just, contextualize what we're talking about here today. New York City Parks manages millions of trees. Approximately 86% of our whole canopy is actually in our forests, something that we don't necessarily think about when we are walking along the streets. But what we do often think about are the other 14% of trees, which are our street trees, of which, as of the last count, which was almost 10 years ago at this point, we counted over 666,000 street trees and another 156,000 trees in our landscape parks. Oops, excuse me. Geez, this is a little, there we go. I'm going to provide, the borough president staff already have this presentation, so I'm not going to go down this chart. But just so you know, in the last 3 years, we have planted over 14,000 trees in Brooklyn alone. That doesn't count the rest of the city. Really awesome numbers and really delivering in places that need trees a lot. So, okay, so how do we currently approach street tree planting and what is going to change? Right now, we have to follow a series of mandates. one of the main contributors to the backlog of trees that we need to plant are many thousands, over 42,000 public service requests across the whole city, not just in Brooklyn. We're also committed to planting trees in the highest heat vulnerable neighborhoods as determined by the Department of Health's Heat Vulnerability Index. This is something that we are specifically funded for by City Hall, and we have been since since fiscal year 2018, but Mayor Adams has also renewed that commitment. And of course, city council members, including some of the offices that are here tonight, routinely give us capital funding each fiscal year, to which we also respond by planting trees and installing tree guards. And then lastly, something you may not know about is that we also have to plant trees for legal obligations, we'll call them. This is in response to Local Law 3 for removing trees and replacing them in kind, and then of course for zoning regulations. So what that means is that while our current approach, it's amazing what we do. I will say that as the director of the program, but it does result in some inefficiencies. It means that we need to prioritize some things over others. And, as I said before, our service request backlog is over 42,000 trees. The wait time across the city is an average of 3 years. Some of you folks who work in your various capacities here tonight may have heard from constituents. I called 311 for a tree 3 years ago, and I've been waiting. I am very familiar with the story, and I do wish that we could deliver faster. But what we're hoping to do with this new approach, I'll tell you tonight, is to create something that is more predictable so that we can be more accountable to the public and to ourselves, and still achieve all of these commitments that we're obligated to achieve. Okay, so this is this new approach. We're calling it neighborhood tree planting. I know, it's incredibly creative, but the reason is that we really want to focus this on being a community-driven, community-focused effort, more so than it is today. So we're looking at serving discrete areas of the city. I'll show you some maps that you will probably not be able to digest in just one sitting, but again, you'll have the opportunity to look at this presentation later. But we won't just be planting trees. And this is something that this is something that we will try to, that we already do to some extent, but we are trying to increase the scope of what we do. That is removing stumps and trees, in addition to tree planting along a block and closing empty unplantable tree beds. So I think the bottom line take home tonight, which is possibly contentious, is that we have decided that in order to do this, we have to discontinue the intake of service requests from the public. And like I said, there is a long and unpredictable, to some extent, wait time, and we're hoping that this cycle instead will allow us to be more community focused, be more comprehensive, be more efficient, and be more predictable. And I think the last point that I'd like to make is what you may or may not be able to see at the bottom, which is that we're focused in the early years of this. We're continuing our commitment to to fully plant all the HVI 4 and 5. These are the highest heat vulnerable neighborhoods across the city by the end of 2027. And then, of course, we're also looking not just at equity, but equality, reaching portions of each community board every 3 years on a 9-year cycle. So to help illustrate what it is that I'm talking about to you guys, I hope this doesn't sound like too much inside baseball. Today, if I received a service request, I might go out to the block, I might inspect, that person saying, I would like a tree in front of my house because I had a small dead one. Okay, so I might go there and I might remove that tree and replace it with a new tree, but not necessarily address any other potential related issues on that block. But with this new approach, what we're looking to do is to, in fact, do what we're calling this comprehensive streetscape improvement. And this can and probably will include doing expansions of existing tree beds, which is what you see on the far left, planting new trees and removing stumps, planting new trees where they weren't before, which is something we already routinely do. And then the last thing that I want to note for folks here who interface with the communities often is that I know, especially in Brooklyn, having worked in Brooklyn for 4 years of my career at Parks, that people are really passionate about taking care of their blocks. And I totally appreciate that. And so there are sometimes locations that we cannot plant, unfortunately. But I also know that there are lots of people that steward those very same tree beds, right, and plant flowers. And if we see this, we're not going to restore it with concrete because we want people to, be able to enjoy this little bit of green space, something that we're all always hoping for more of. So just want to emphasize that. And to talk briefly about implementation, right now we're considering this from 2024 through 2026, what we're calling a transition phase. It's a transition in that, and this is sort of hyper bureaucratic, we do all of our work through contracts. The current contracts that we have in the system that are currently working and that are in the pipeline do not have all of the quantity and scope to do as many stumps and stump removals and small tree removals as we would like, but that will be changing over time. So basically, the areas that you see in the various shades of blue are going to be the areas that we are by and large focused on. And I will emphasize here for the council members that are here that those of your offices who have allocated funding to the tree planting program over the last few years, and that funding has not been spent to date to your knowledge, we are still committed to finishing that, to completing those allocations in the next year or so. Let's see, what else would I like to note here? I think the only other thing that I would want to note here is that this is in and of itself its own program. This does not stop, preclude, or change any of our other tree maintenance programs, like the tree pruning and removal program. There's actually also a stump removal program. This does not preclude that in any way, shape, or form. Okay, last thing is full implementation. Again, you will not be able to fully digest this. Basically, what we're saying is that we will be in every community board every 3 years. Sorry, excuse me, I'm tripping over my own words. We will be working on a 9-year cycle across the city to basically plant every available location, okay? And within that, we will visit every single community board every 3 years. So for those of you council members that are concerned possibly about getting trees in your district, trees will still be planted in your district on a relatively predictable basis. Anybody else who's a community liaison, it's the same thing. Trees will be planted, and in fact, the areas that you see delineated here, each of those zones will be, fully stocked. In other words, planted to the fullest with stumps and trees removed and replaced as needed. For a little bit more specifics, in Brooklyn, this is what the map looks like, and so you can see the transition phase plantings that are occurring now through 2026. And it's not a perfect match, but you can kind of see that in phase 3, which is 9 years from now, there is a lot of replication, and that's on purpose because ideally what will happen in the next year or two is that while we're in this blue phase, we will fully stock those blocks and not have to come back to them for a few years when there will be more planting opportunity again because trees fall, there are storms, things like that. And the last part of this that I just wanted to mention is the rollout, and that's why I'm here today, to speak to all of you. We have run this by numerous other bodies, whether that is, at the city government, at high levels across city government, but also to some other community stakeholders. We have updated our website to show this. I will note that 311, I am pretty certain, gosh, I keep messing this up, so I can correct the record for you guys later. But I'm pretty sure that if you call 311 today, you would not be able to submit a public service request. The mobile app, I think, still accepts them, but that will be closing in March, which I think this says here, or it should. That will be happening in March. We will be ceasing the intake across the board. So with that, I will stop talking. I will allow anybody to ask any questions that they may have. And thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay. So we have Chairperson Baptiste, then we have Ayana, and then we have, oh gosh, okay. First here.
Right. So Chairperson Cesar. So remind me again, Mr. Strauss, was that yours?
Yes.
All right, great. Thank you so much for this. So I have a few rapid fire questions. So like you mentioned, you believe 311 today, public service request wouldn't be accepted and the app would be phased in March.
I'm pretty certain that that's correct.
Okay, great. So then the question I have is, so for 311, whether it was just an automated like call tree or you had actually people staffing that, what's going to happen to those people once they're no longer accepting those requests? And then my next question for the app is, when that function is killed, does that mean you're actually removing it outright from the app, or is it going to be grayed out? Are you letting people know in the multiple languages? So that's my first question, just in terms of what happens once like those ways for people to make these requests are sunset.
Got it. I'm just writing this down.
No, that's
Just
fine. That's fine. Yeah, I get it.
Okay, so they will be provided with a default message that explains a little bit more about what we're doing. It's not just going to be like a bye, you know, this never happened. And like I said before, the parks website is currently updated with more information. I'm pretty certain that the message that they will get will refer them to the parks website so that they can learn a little bit more. The maps that I just showed you are on there, and we've tried to make it as transparent as possible. That answered part of your question, I think. What was the other part? I'm sorry.
So that did answer part of it. The second, and I think it did for the most part, just because I was also asking in the app as well. Like,
I think that that's going to be the same.
Okay.
Truthfully, I'm not onto the particulars of like what happens in the app itself.
Mhm. Okay, cool. Thank you for that. And then my follow-up question is, like you mentioned, the goal is to be more comprehensive. So the question I have is, for example, when you showed that that slide that showed hitting all the trees on the block instead, you know, New Yorkers are passionate about who's responsible for the sidewalk and stuff like this. And there's also stuff about porous pavement and environmental initiatives. So my question is, would this be done in conjunction with other city agencies if you had a situation where a sidewalk is partially damaged because the tree stump is coming up, and at the same time, another city agency determined that this one was a candidate for like semi-porous pavement? Or is it's just going to be, yeah, Parks comes in and does all that stuff, but then another city agency comes and says, oh, it turns out we needed to do work too. So how siloed or collaborative will this work be? That's my question for you.
That's a really great question. I can answer. Okay, so using a very real world example, you know, you mentioned like, we know that there are lots of instances of tree roots that are lifting sidewalks. There is a Parks Department program that addresses this for class 1, 2, 3, for 1, 2, and 3 family homes called Trees and Sidewalks. The city funds that. But anything beyond that, or a different type of building, would not fall under that and would be responsible for their own repairs. As for the collaboration piece, also a great question, and something that I don't think that we have discussed in any major detail. When you refer to the porous pavement side, I'm obviously familiar with what porous sidewalk is,
Yep.
but I'm not familiar with any projects that are actively installing that. Is that a DOT or DEP thing? Do you know?
I forget which agency it is, but I brought that up just because from what you had mentioned, if this works correctly in a 9-year cycle, this program would hit every community board,
Every
and it would
block,
hit
ideally.
every block ideally, and it would hit them in a 3-year cycle. So one of the challenges is that 3-year cycle doesn't change the average wait time that currently exists. So then if that delta is not changing, then the delta that makes it better has to be the quality of service.
Mhm.
And so that's why I ask about the collaboration, because if people hear, oh, I won't be able to ask for trees anymore, and then you tell them, yeah, so you can wait 3 years and you'll still wait 3 years. And the question that people ask is, so what am I getting better? And I feel like what you're advocating for is the quality of service would be better because it'd be more comprehensive.
Right.
But then if the work is going to be siloed, then people may be, all right, fine, you did 12 trees on the block instead of 2, but I still have to talk to another agency because this other issue was there. So that's why I'm asking about the
I
collaboration.
see. Okay. I don't think I can answer that directly at
Okay.
this moment, but I think that it's definitely worth it. And that question alone made it worth my time to come here because that's the type of stuff that I'm hoping to garner from these types of meetings across the city.
Cool, no problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson Caesar. I'm sorry for calling you Chairperson, not Caesar. So we have too many names. Ms. Williams, PM 41, and then it'll be followed by Chairperson Camacho.
When you introduce yourself, would you mind telling me what your affiliation is, just because
Sure.
it's helpful for me?
My name is Ayana Williams. I'm the Chief of Staff for Councilmember Darlene Mealy,
Great.
40th District,
Okay.
41st District, I'm sorry. My question about the trees, you're planting these trees, and we love trees, don't get me wrong, but have you looked at how much allergy-induced illnesses there are? And I do know that there's a difference between planting male and female trees.
Sure.
Are we planting more female trees to prevent these allergies? Or are we going to continue to plant male trees and have our people not be able to breathe? That's my first question.
Okay. Do you want me to answer that one first, or do
That'd
you
be
want to
nice.
ask your other
No.
one?
I'm ready.
I have a feeling that my answer to you is not going to be satisfactory, but the answer is that we plant a wide array of trees, and we do not prioritize them based on sex alone. There are trees that have both male and female parts, and there are trees that are uniquely male or female. And allergies are certainly a contributor. I deal with them myself. They're an irritant. I deal with them myself. But I think that most of the public health data out there that we have seen cites that trees are typically the part of the mitigation for air pollution. And it's this fine particulate matter that is a big reason for asthma, as I understand it. And so I don't have, we do not base our policy of which tree species to plant based on allergens alone. That much I can say.
Okay, so it's random.
What's that?
So it's random.
It is definitely not random, but allergens alone or potential for allergies is not one of the criteria that we look at.
So now my other question is this.
Mhm.
We have trees all over the city that have, what do you call these little gates that we have around the trees?
Tree
What are they?
guards.
Tree guards. A lot of those, if you walked around and looked, are pretty much homes for the rats to tunnel and dig into. I understand that they can't dig through concrete per se, but if you're going to keep digging up concrete and planting trees into the actual dirt, is that not going to contribute to the rat factor or give them safe burrows, so to say, into the ground? Are we thinking about that at all?
I do know that it's being discussed. I am not involved in those conversations. I'm sorry to give you I'm sorry to deflect. I wish I could answer you directly. I know that tree beds, among other places, can be places for rats to burrow, and I understand that it is a major concern. I will see if we can provide some sort of information to you further. But at this time, that is not something that that my team has been instructed to modify our practices based on rats. That
Okay,
I can
that's
say.
fair.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chairperson Camacho, and then followed by Chairperson Morgan.
I know that in my district, we have a lot of homeowners and a lot of complaints. We see what's going on. Is one, what kind of tree are you planting?
We plant over 150 species of
What
trees.
kind of tree?
Right.
You might get big ones that the roots go under, and people have problems with their pipes. You have one that the leaves are so big that now we got to pick up leaves that go into the drain pipes, and we have flood conditions now in Bushwick. So now what we have to do is clean 18 inches over the curb because we're required by law to do it. We're a homeowner, and no one helps homeowners out, especially people that are seniors, that are on a fixed income in regards to that. So you're planting trees. There is no mechanism of pruning and making sure that it's taken care of and making sure that the tree is not as high as it's supposed to be, like they used to put back in the days where it picks up the root. We have now tenants that are having issues now with the pipes and their sidewalks And the first thing they tell them is that to go to the controller's office and put in a complaint, and then it goes MIA, missing in action. Are they gonna prune the trees? You know, we're getting homeowners, I'm a homeowner. Besides, I'm the chair of the community board. I'm getting tired of me cleaning up after you guys when you guys aren't doing the job, and yet my taxes go up and my insurance in my home go up, or they don't cover me because you guys put a tree and it's a tripping hazard and no one comes out and I get no insurance or no liability. So what kind of tree are you putting up? Are you gonna put maintenance to prune it and cut it and maintain that it's healthy and wonderful, or treat it with some of the diseases that are going on now? You know, because parks is easy to plant anything and don't come to the people that is adjacent and affected by it. So I want Borough Hall to make sure that if they are gonna plant in front of these people's homes and in their houses, that they go and talk to them and knock on their neighbor and bring them a cake and tell them what they're gonna do, and not come in here with this bully tactics. Because our people are getting disenfranchised, and that's another tactic for these developers to come in there and take your home when the city's not doing their job. So we really need to find out what kind of tree are you planting? Is it gonna go over the roots into the sidewalk? And the size of the leaves, because now I know leaves, you know, you do plant trees that are smaller that you can maintain with the pruning program that they have, or you can do X amount of pruning, because there's a pruning program that Parks has that you can put prune under just in case it comes up to the side, because I could take you to my neighborhood where the roots are coming up, where the tree is growing to the sidewalk, and no one's answering the question, but I want to continue to pump more trees, more trees, more trees. So take care of the ones you have first, right? Find out what is good for the neighborhood, and then talk to your neighbors and talk to the people instead of cutting the sidewalk and saying it's our right to do it. And then you tell after something happens, when they throw garbage there and we get tickets, $150, $100, $200, and then they knock down the whole block and they do a big building, and then you give the company a whole one tree to put up for the whole block, and then they qualify for extra more affordable housing. So we really need to address those issues and concerns.
Thank you, Chairperson Camacho. Provide us with the information. Trees? He said Chairperson Camacho, I'm going to interject. Our presenter stated there are over 150 species, so we will ask them to provide us with more information. We'll provide it to the board members. Thank you. Chairperson Camacho? Chairperson Camacho? Thank you. You don't have the mic. The recording is not taking your speech, and we need to move on. Thank you very much. Chairperson Morgan, then we have Bottega from CM 38, and then we have Chairperson Baptiste, and we have to move on. We have to move on.
Would you mind telling me what your name is?
Good evening, Janice Morgan, Brooklyn Community Board 16, which is Ocean Hill and Brownsville. And I do want to thank Chairperson Camacho for thoroughly expressing the concerns around trees in our neighborhoods. I think he was able to tap into every issue. My biggest question is, I know that there were trees planted in Brownsville very recently because one got planted in front of my house without notification.
Okay.
And so I want to know if this program is taken into consideration where there have already been trees planted recently, and is it going to start in communities where maybe trees have not been planted, as opposed to coming into Brownsville and dropping more trees when trees were already dropped. I know for sure that several trees were dropped in the neighborhood.
When you say dropped, do you mean planted?
Planted.
Okay.
Right. I dropped, planted, same thing. The other question I have is in Brownsville, we do have a lot of trees that are coming down. And so I do have to echo the sentiment of the fact that there are very old, sick, and damaged trees that the city does not address. There are some trees that are still tearing up properties. We get a lot of complaints, and it really is concerning that you all are prioritizing planting more trees without addressing the issues that you have with existing trees. Where there are trees that are damaged, you should prioritize taking down those trees and maybe replacing them with the smaller trees that are being planted, because homeowners are definitely paying thousands and thousands of dollars to have their sidewalks repaired. They're paying thousands of dollars to have trees trimmed on their private property. These are all trees that technically, some are considered private because they're in backyards. Some are in the front yards, and then the city doesn't come out and respond to them. We're getting wasp nests growing in a lot of these trees. The city does not come out and address those issues, yet we have these wasp nests hanging over our homes, and then we have to call private exterminators to come and handle that. So I'm going to end there, but the tree situation it's not that great. And so coming here and telling us you're going to plant more problems, that's, I know trees do contribute to the environment, but for homeowners, they can present a lot of problems and expensive problems.
Understood. I want to just say, I think you did ask a couple questions, so I want to try to address them briefly. One of the questions, please correct me if I misstate what you said, was, will we plant trees where trees have recently been planted? Not directly. I would say, so Brownsville, and there are a host of other neighborhoods across the city that do fall into that high heat vulnerability index metric that we use. And those neighborhoods are being prioritized for planting more trees. Concurrently, or parallel with that, there is the Parks Department's tree maintenance programs. One of them which, removes trees and prunes trees, and that's based on risk. And risk is determined by a borough forestry inspector. They don't work for me directly, but generally speaking, they come out, they inspect trees based on 311 requests. So that will not stop. I said that before, but I just want to reiterate that will not stop. So borough forestry inspectors would come out, they would inspect each and every tree that has been requested by the public to assess the level of risk, and then prioritize the work to be done based on that. And we have like 4 different buckets of categories. The highest categories get addressed very quickly, whether that's removal or pruning. And then the last thing is trees and sidewalks, which I mentioned before. I don't know, the specifics of what you alluded to earlier when you said that homeowners are paying thousands of dollars for their sidewalks, and we acknowledge that the city does not have enough resources to fix sidewalks around every single tree. But there is the Trees and Sidewalks program, which does repair sidewalks around around 1, 2, and 3 family family, you know what I mean? Homes, thank you. And so I guess to the extent that it is possible, I would encourage constituents to submit requests for that. That also is not stopping anytime soon. And they are not liable if they are in a 1, 2, or 3 family home for sidewalk damage caused by trees. Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
Ms. Bottega. No. Rebecca Colbert is next. And then we have Chair Baptiste, Chair Buserith. Okay, and then we have Barros and we have Rebels. Okay. Sorry.
No. Thanks. I'll try to be brief. Oh, I wanted to just piggyback on the thing about porous concrete from earlier. In Shahana Hanif's district, I believe in Windsor Terrace, they did a pilot program for porous concrete. So I'm sure her office could give a little bit more indication on that. That's outside of my district of CD6. But I was wondering if you could speak a little bit on, we already talked, there's a lot of species on like the size of trees to be expected in new planting areas, just because I know when we look at a map and it shows number of trees, it can be a little misleading in terms of the actual canopy and thus the like heat vulnerability. mitigation. I don't know if you could speak on that.
Sure. The trees that we plant tend to be about 10 to 12 feet tall at the time of planting. Their mature height and width can vary greatly, and our foresters are professionally trained to select trees for each site that will reach their maximum potential without causing problems, 40 or 50 years down the line. I will say something that, I've heard and have experienced the complaints that I've received today from other folks in this audience, and totally acknowledge them. And I want to also note that many of the issues that we're experiencing today are a result of different practices from 40 or 50 years ago, which are unfortunately affecting all of us now. I'm proud to say that for the 15 years that I've worked at parks in tree planting, this is something that we are keenly aware of and thinking about. There's a reason that we make tree beds bigger than they ever used to be. Many of those lifted sidewalks that you see are from huge trees planted in an opening smaller than this podium. So there's, tree roots just like us, right? They're opportunistic. They're trying to find a way to survive. They're fighters, but that can cause infrastructure issues. So yeah, so the trees that we plant are appropriate for each location.
Great. And yeah, I just wanted to kind of second also, hoping that when we say comprehensive planning, we are speaking about a little bit more than like doing a block instead of ad hoc, like really being like interagency and being a little bit more comprehensive in any sort of greening in terms of like, yeah, porous concrete or storm water capture and rain gardens, and making sure that trees are one of like many solutions. And that if we're going to use comprehensive, that we really mean that there's a lot of like interagency
Coordination.
Anyway.
Understood. Thank you.
Chair Baptiste.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your presentation today. Couple of concerns really.
Okay.
So first, while I definitely think I don't think we're anti-tree here, but I do have concerns that I've heard from my district in terms of the level of community engagement in which it happens. And I've heard a number of occasions where it's like, okay, there's experts who will decide what's going to go here and there, but I haven't really heard about what the community engagement aspect is of that.
Mhm.
Because I know that on a number of places, you've heard a number of the complaints from some of my colleagues about where they put the trees, when they put the trees. Nobody knows the trees are coming. There's no support with regards to that. What kinds of trees are going there, how high they grow, because that contributes to other concerns as well. For example, for safety. So all of a sudden now you have trees, and as the canopy grows, you get less from the street lamps. So I'm not sure exactly what the coordination is happening with DLT as well, if there is any. So I just want to bring those issues up, and I would like to definitely make, I would hope that Parks will have an expanded conversation with our communities, because I think it's important that these issues come up, especially as now we're talking about now the PSRs are going away. So that's one less avenue of communication. I just want to make sure that we're able to have this so that way it's a holistic conversation. We're taking into account the concerns of the communities.
I'd like to just actually respond really quick. And first of all, could you just confirm which district you're in?
Community Board 9.
CB9, great. Second thing is, I actually would like to ask you guys a question back. I'm coming to you, telling you that we're trying to modify our approach, and we didn't just put community focused in there so that, it would be a great selling point and so that we could all walk out of here happy, go lucky. We actually would like to increase the community engagement aspect, especially because it's going to be at, so block by block focused. So do you have a suggestion as to the appropriate forum? And I'll just qualify this by saying, like, during the Million Trees NYC days, I remember I used to go as a forester, I used to go to community board meetings. And unfortunately, in those meetings, I would tell, folks where I was going, maybe I'd get a comment back, but I never felt like I was getting the engagement that I wished for, right? So I'm wondering, is there a venue that maybe isn't the, the monthly community board meeting or what have you, that a more productive conversation could be had with members of the community to understand what concerns there may be and to be able to explain our policies in any more of a robust way?
Very quickly, I mean, I definitely get it. Our community board meetings are usually, the agendas are packed, so it's kind of hard to have an in-depth conversation. But speaking for my board, I know that we would definitely be interested either through a committee meeting or if it's a town hall. But it's going to take a few meetings actually in terms of being able to get that, to kind of understand what the ideas are and to kind of get the word out in terms of this is an opportunity to to have a conversation that's going to affect our district for the next 40, 50 years, as you said before.
Thank you. And I just want to extend that same invite to a productive conversation with your constituency. So if you can find, I'm not going to be able to stay for the whole duration of this meeting, but if there's a way that we can connect post, I would love to hear from you folks and try to actually cultivate that and make that happen. Because what I don't want is a negative feeling about this. I would like this to be seen more as an improvement. And we're all New Yorkers, so I understand that no one's ever going to fully agree.
Chair Buseworth.
Anthony Bushrod, Chair Community Board 3, Bedford-Stuyvesant. Just a couple questions. I'm curious about the 42,000 service request.
Yeah.
Is the shift to this new practice a shift toward equity? I'm curious if the nature of the service request are folks who are in the blue zone mostly. And so, yeah.
You're talking about the blue zone, but I want to make sure that you know. So this bottom map here represents the highest HVI neighborhoods. And yes, by and large, many of those service requests tend to be in the lighter orange and yellow.
Okay.
So
that's clarifying. The other question is just a question from my district, first of all. So on Fulton Street, I don't know, when those trees were planted in the 70s or 80s, they would put these like gates around
directly around the tree?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now the trees are being injured because the gates aren't moving. So I'm curious if kind of that issue can be resolved. And this other question was related to how, it's kind of related to Fred's question. When you engage, when should community boards think about prioritizing blocks that need tree planting as part of this process? So that we can be more highly engaged in the areas that we think should be prioritized as you go around, as you do this 3-year cycle.
Good question. I don't have an answer today, but I think that that's worthwhile for continued discussion. Thank you.
Ms. Barnes. The mic. Wait for the mic, yes. There you go.
Oh, okay. Thank you. And I love trees, but I do want to add to the problem of that these roots are damaging the sidewalks. And I don't know, I'm Brooklyn Community Board 1 in Williamsburg, and I would say there's many blocks where every time I turn around, this sidewalk is, the roots of these trees are damaging the sidewalk to the point that there needs to be work done on these sidewalks. I've contacted the forestry, I've followed through. But at this point, it's very expensive. But I mean, there's many homeowners that are ready to do it, but it is very expensive. The program does not pay for it. The homeowners have to pay for it. And then forestry has to be able to review it and certify it. But it's one of the problems that has come up many times, and I would like to be able to see how the community can work together to address it. Thank you.
Thank you. And duly noted.
Ms. Revolta.
Hi, I'm Sasha from Council District 48. Very quickly, you said in the rollout, the 311 website and the app will cease to do the intaking for tree planting. That will stop in March 2025. Will that also like dribble down to tree inspections as well as pruning requests, or will that still be open?
That will still be open.
Okay, next part of my question would be for the tree grading system. On the website, it states that when an inspector comes to inspect the tree and see whether or not it's viable for the tree and sidewalk program, there's a grading system in which if it gets a 90 to 100, the Parks Department will address the issue and repair the sidewalk. If it's between 80 and 90, then the website states that the address will be put on a waiting list. From my experience dealing with constituents, because I'm a constituent liaison, so I hear all the complaints, that doesn't happen. what I get back from New York, from Parks is that even if it scores as high as an 89, they won't do anything to address the sidewalk. And homeowners are extremely frustrated for having to brunt the bill for paying for a sidewalk that's broken based on a tree that they never asked for. So I just wanted to know what's the plan for that moving forward after 2025. Thank you.
And unfortunately, I do not have a response for you because I don't manage that program directly. But we can provide an answer to the borough president's office.
Thank you so much for that presentation. Thank you for your answers.
Sure.
And we look forward to receiving the presentation and those answers that we are waiting for.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me. I appreciate all of your time.
Thank you. Let's give him a round of applause.
Not necessary, but thank you.
Okay, so we're going to move on to Borough Hall updates. We do know there's still a public hearing, so we're going to try to be as efficient as possible. I'm going to ask Ms. Church to give our updates.
Two really quick updates. Community board applications are open until February 14th. Please help us spread the word. We've been sending out social media packages, flyers. If you have any organizations that we can come out and speak with about getting involved in our community boards, please feel free to reach out to myself or Bianca. Also, the borough president has big news today. Applications are now open for the FY 25-26 capital funding. Sorry, 26. 25. Oh my gosh. Sorry. 26-27 capital funding. City agencies, nonprofit organizations, cultural institutions, and public schools are eligible to apply. We will be sending all this information out to the community boards. Please, please, please share it in your e-newsletters and any sort of publications that you're doing, whether digital or paper. Please help us get the word out. This is how we together can build Brooklyn. Thank you.
Okay. So we're going to move on to unfinished business. As Chair Baptiste mentioned earlier, there was a request for the attendance records. We are still compiling those and we're going to have them before the next meeting. Unfortunately, with the holidays, we were not able to meet that before this meeting, but just know we are working on them and we will promulgate them to you all. We're going to move on to, oh, is there any other unfinished business from the members that you can recall? Okay. So we're going to move on to our communications and reports section, and this is the time for our public hearing. I'm sorry, yes. You have a. So. Give me one second, I'm sorry. Okay. I'm going to ask that you hold it for other business so we can do the hearing because that is the section 7, but I will get you right after the hearing. So I just want to do some housekeeping and remind everyone for public hearing, we're going to hear the presentation. For those borough board members, we know that you're excited and you want to speak, but we have members of the public here. We're going to allow the members of the public to speak first before the board members. And after all of the members of the public, then the board members can speak. We're going to ask the members of the public who wish to testify after the presentation to line up or sit down on these seats here before you're going to testify. When it is your turn, you will stand at the podium, you will state your name, and you can have 2 minutes. You have a time clock here for your testimony, comments, whatever it is that you want to have. Once the 2 minutes are up, we will allow you to finish your sentence, but we do have to move on because it is a public hearing and we want to give everyone ample time to have comments. So again, after everyone from the public speaks, then we will open the floor to the borough board members. Same rules apply. You have 2 minutes. And once the clock goes off, please finish your thought so we can move on to the next member. So we're going to ask, we're going to ask our Atlantic Avenue Mixed Use Plan presenters to come up and to present for this public hearing.
Hello, good evening, everyone. My name is Jonah, and I'm a team leader in the Brooklyn office of the Department of City Planning. I'm also joined by a few of my colleagues who are sitting in the front here from not just the department, but also the Department of Housing Preservation and Development, who are a close partner on our plan. And then you'll also be hearing from a couple of colleagues who will be co-presenting. Jesse Hirakawa is the project manager for the Atlantic Avenue mixed-use plan, and Sarit Plotkin, the director of neighborhood planning at HPD. So we just have a few slides oh, there you go. Perfect. So I know the screen is a little small. I'm going to do my best to summarize. So in a general snapshot, AIM Up, as we like to call the Atlantic Avenue mixed-use plan, is a neighborhood plan to promote jobs and housing, as well as infrastructure improvements and other neighborhood-based investments in an industrially zoned area of central Brooklyn that we're seeking to transform, again, to promote a mix of housing and jobs. In total, we estimate about 4,600 new homes, over 800,000 square feet for commercial or community facility space. Over about 2,800 new jobs would be created as part of this plan, which we're really excited about. And here is just a view perspective showing Atlantic Avenue, which we'll show later on, but that's kind of our grand vision for the corridor. So very quickly, to orient everybody, AIM Up is approximately 21 blocks situated between Vanderbilt Avenue to the west, Nostrand Avenue to the east, Bergen Street to the south, and Atlantic Avenue generally to the north. It's mostly along Atlantic Avenue, but does include two non-contiguous areas to promote affordable housing, which we'll get into later on. Most of the areas within Community District 8, with a portion in Community District 3 to the north of Atlantic. And as you can see here, it's just a few blocks to the east of Atlantic Terminal. So we're building on over 10 years of planning work, which we're really excited to reach this point. That work was led by Community Board 8 as part of their M-Crown plan. In 2022, we worked with council members Crystal Hudson, Chiose, and the community boards to agree on moving ahead with a neighborhood-wide plan as part of it, a commitment by the administration. And then in 2023, we did a ton of outreach, which we'll get into a little more in a moment. But that culminated in a report to capture community priorities and a vision in 2023. And then over the past year, we've been focused on the technical parts of our planning work, like putting forth a land use application with zoning, preparing a draft environmental impact statement, advancing capital planning and other priorities that we've heard during the process. And then this past October, we kicked off our official 7th-month ULURP or public review period, now that we have the draft environmental work as well as the land use application. And then in the present day, we're in the midst of the borough president's 30-day review period. We just finished the community board's 60-day review period, and then we'll have the we're going to go to the city planning commission next, followed by the city council before, knock on wood, the plan will be approved. And then, so just to give everyone a little context, the area AIM Up is generally a mix of industrial, some residential uses which are non-conforming, and some commercial use, but generally it's a very it's an area that has a lot of parking, a lot of low-rise warehouses in the midst of an area surrounded by well-established residential areas, which are largely kind of brownstone areas, but also benefit from amazing access to public transit, to services, amenities, to major job hubs like downtown Brooklyn and Lower Manhattan. And then over the past few decades, as rents have risen, as demand for housing has grown tremendously, we've contextually rezoned and preserved the areas around AMA for the most part, except for allowing growth along Atlantic Yards or Pacific Park. So that's put an increasing amount of pressure on areas like AMUP to accommodate some growth, not just for local needs, but also for thinking more broadly about the needs to accommodate housing and jobs across the borough. And then, so as part of that pressure, since 2019, we had 7 private rezoning applications just in AMUP alone, not including a few just outside. And that's just really to demonstrate how much demand there has been for housing, but also a need for not having these one-off piecemeal applications, but a need for a comprehensive, holistic plan for the neighborhood. So I just wanted to provide this background because that was a really contributing factor for why the council member and also the administration wanted to have a neighborhood plan, so that we're not just allowing for private applications, but we're taking it on as a city, and we're doing it in a way that also not only changes zoning, but also allows for commitments to improve infrastructure, which can range from supporting nearby schools to improving streets and parks. So that's really tied together with the vision and purpose of our planning work here. And then just very briefly, these are a few images of the outreach we did in 2023. We held a number of working group meetings devoted to specific topics. We also had larger community planning workshops. And this work culminated, as I said, in an outreach report, which also captured the vision priorities. I'm not going to get into the details, but just wanted to let everybody know one of the top priorities we heard was around preserving and protecting affordable housing, particularly for residents vulnerable in the nearby area, and also having a coordinated street plan for Atlantic Avenue, because it's such a large corridor that really has been dividing the neighborhoods, particularly Bed-Stuy and Crown Heights, and is really unsafe to cross. But at the same time, a need to balance the goals of safety with the different users of Atlantic Avenue, whether they're truck drivers or it's freight movement, to bicyclists and pedestrians. So, and then lastly, there was interest in the Bedford Atlantic Armory, which is a large city facility where it's partly a men's shelter, but there was a lot of interest in better utilizing the space to support like a workforce development center or some other type of benefit for the local community. So now I'm going to pass it over to Jesse.
Thank you. And so kind of building upon the outreach report that Jonah was just mentioning on the previous slide, this culminated into the actual plan proposal, right? That has a lot of components from, zoning, capital investments, and, different opportunities for affordable housing. And I'm going to walk through some of that proposal of what has outcome of everything Jonah had just mentioned. So the first thing is we really, as to the call of looking at Atlantic Avenue, we recognize that there has been a lot of safety issues, and one of the loudest cries was, we need to, as a response to more density, how are we addressing Atlantic Avenue? And so working with our sister agencies at the Department of Transportation, the city is continuing to commit to adding street improvement projects, which we call SIPs, our DOT calls SIPs. And so we are we've already announced at our certification a few months ago, certain intersections in the Atlantic Avenue area, several on Atlantic Avenue and some in the surrounding intersections, where certain improvements could happen, whether they're looking at kind of daylighting opportunities or kind of extending out curbs, right? Mainly for safety of all the users of Atlantic Avenue, not just pedestrians, but also recognizing that there are trucks and cars also, right? And so this was, that was announced a while ago. Additionally, as part of the neighborhood plan, there is a rezoning as part of this, right? Zoning map amendment. As Jonah said earlier, this area in the middle, right? The larger area is currently a manufacturing, M11 that we call. We are proposing to rezone a majority of the whole M11 area in that portion to several zoning districts. They're highlighted out in my different colors. We're looking at Atlantic Avenue as one area, right, for the highest density, and then kind of breaking it down to the North-South Avenue areas, which is really focusing on the North-South Avenues, Classen, Franklin, Grand Avenue. Really see those as the connector streets, North and South. And then there's the mid-block area, which is the lighter orange, which is the mid-block areas on Pacific, Dean, and Bergen streets, which are south of Atlantic Avenue. And then there's a residential area, which is in yellow, which are the two kind of satellite shapes to the right and left that you see that are non-contiguous, which our partners at HPD will speak to. And then we have an armory section, which is just only rezoning the Atlantic Armory there, just not to change the use of the armory, but more or less to allow for any future modifications to the armory. But the armory is going to stay as is. To jump ahead a little bit, Atlantic Avenue, right? Really, mainly this is kind of the largest street, right, where we see the opportunities for the most density, for the most housing, active ground floor uses, opportunities to address, improving the street, as I mentioned earlier, but also what kind of how can we shape the envelopes of the zoning to allow for interesting architecture and also create a better public realm area. And to kind of enhance that, not only are we proposing to rezone it, we're also adding a special district. And so what this allows us to do is to allow special different zoning changes to the underlying existing zoning to make what makes this area unique. And so some of the criticism that we heard was kind of the C638 density that we're proposing along Atlantic Avenue, which allows an FAR of 9 and maximum building height of 18 stories. Could be a lot, right, and is a little tall for this area. And so recognizing this through the special district, we can add a little bit more extra rules to try to mitigate some of those concerns. So one of them is we can mandate a building set wall back, which will effectively create a wider sidewalk, right? More people, more housing. Atlantic Avenue sidewalks are narrow, and so that's through zoning. This is a way we can add more sidewalk room. Additionally, walking along kind of taller buildings can have a concern. So through zoning, we're mandating that some of the longer buildings that take up more of the street wall on the sidewalk, that they have to push and pull, right, to making sure that we're creating interesting architecture so that you're not just getting like a sheer wall condition. That's the name of another one. We're mandating active ground floor uses so that, we're not going to recommend that people have housing on the bottom floor. We want to create, whether it's retail or community facility or any job generating uses on the ground floor. There's a few others where another thing we're adding is we heard this outcry of opportunities for new open space. And so there actually are not that many opportunities in this area, right? No, there's no public land where we can look at that. And so we added a CPC authorization where you can have an open space bonus, where if the developer of a large site creates open space at a 1-to-4 ratio, this new open space will allow them to build an extra 1 to 3 stories extra provided that they're creating these open space to a certain standard. And so that was an opportunity that we heard from the community as an opportunity to create more open space. And if they, we'll say, if they do that, they will have to go through the community board. They will have to go through the CPC. There is a general outreach process that they're mandated to do. Looking at our north-south avenues, right, that I was talking about earlier, Grand, Classen, and Franklin streets. This is a slightly step down from Atlantic Avenue. This is kind of our more mid to high density, some of the same requirements, active ground floors. Really looking at these as connector streets for the neighborhoods. Moving on to the mid blocks, right, where we have like Dean, Pacific, and Bergen. This is the lower density, mid density. We're looking at density heights that are more appropriate for mid blocks. And in additional, we're adding a mid block incentive for this area where we're not requiring any uses here. However, we heard from the community boards and local stakeholders that we wanted to incentivize certain types of job generating uses. And so in order to allow that in these mid block areas, we're creating a zoning incentive where if they do have a mixed use building where they're providing job generating uses, they're given a bonus of 1.1 FAR or an extra couple of stories to fit that. That was very brief on zoning, but recognizing our time. So I will hand the mic off to our partners at HPD.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sarit Platkin with the Department of Housing Preservation and Development. I'm glad to be here with you tonight. Thanks, Jonah and Jesse. We're going to start by talking a little bit about kind of the range of housing strategies in the AMUP plan. Through all the public engagement in the process, we, heard loud and clear from both tenants and homeowners that they're really feeling the pressure of rising housing costs and a shortage of available homes. So the strategies that we've put together that you see on the slide today really, fall into two buckets to address that. The first is around preserving affordability and really doing so through both protecting tenants and homeowners and preserving existing affordable housing through financing rehabilitation of existing affordable homes. And then the second major bucket is really about creating new affordable housing to, ease that shortage. And that we do a couple of ways. We finance new affordable homes. The city finances new affordable homes. And then we also administer zoning incentives to encourage the creation of new affordable housing. So we'll be talking about both. There we go. So, most of the new affordable housing in the AMUP area, actually over 1,000 units, is going to be part of the mandatory inclusionary housing program, or MIH. These are homes that, will be part of mixed income buildings on private sites. So in rezoned areas like AMUP, in exchange for higher density, the city actually requires that 20 to 30% of the residential area in a building is set aside for permanently affordable rent stabilized homes. These are built by private developers, but they're administered by the Department of Housing Preservation and Development. We actually market these units through our housing lottery to ensure that they meet the income qualifications. A couple of things I want to note here. Rent and income levels really vary depending on which MIH option is selected. I'll start by just giving the option of giving the example of option 1, which requires that 25% of units are at an average of 60% of the area median income. So that's $81,000 for a family of 3. And for these units, we could expect a mix anywhere between 40 to 80% of the area median income with option 1. So in 2024, just to give you a sense of what that is, that could be a studio apartment from somewhere around $1,100 to $2,200. So that just gives you a sense of kind of the incomes and the rents. But the most important thing with mandatory inclusionary housing that I really want to highlight is that, rents only rise modestly year to year, meaning that, residents can really put lasting roots down in a neighborhood. Oh, okay. And then I think the other thing that I would also really like to highlight is that we're really trying to go beyond mandatory inclusionary housing to build more deeply affordable housing on public sites in the AMUP area. So we actually have 6 public sites at different stages of the development process. We'll, start today by talking about the Dean and Bergen sites, which are HPD sites that were RFP'd in 2021. Since then, we've had developers designated, and it's now coming back for land use approvals. And those are the sites that are, I'm actually going to go back. The sites that are, up by Flatbush Avenue and 6th Avenue. Then we'll jump into, then I also want to point out 1024 Fulton Street, which is actually a state-owned site that they're looking to redevelop with 100% affordable housing. We'll talk about 1134 Pacific Street, a previously city-owned site being developed by a nonprofit. And then we also have 1110 Atlantic and 457 Nostrand, which are sites that are owned by other government agencies that HPD is working closely with on discussing affordable housing opportunities. Okay, so starting with Dean Park Edge, this would include 151 affordable homes for older New Yorkers that earn up to 50% of the AMI. That's, for example, $1,350 for a studio or $1,450 for a 1-bedroom, just to give you a sense. This project's going to have 3,000 square feet of on-site social services and amenity space and 6,500 square feet of new publicly accessible open space that's actually going to connect Dean and Bergen streets. And then our next project, Bergen Green, is going to be an 11-story mixed-use building with 111 affordable homes. And that's going to be through HPD's extremely low and low income affordability program. So 2/3 of the homes in this project will be between 30 and 60% of the area median income. So to give you a sense of rents, that's $1,200 to $1,750 for a 1-bedroom or $1,400 to $2,100 for a 2-bedroom. And I'll also note that approximately 5,000 square feet of space on the ground floor will be used for a multi-purpose cultural arts and recreation center. And there are also going to be 23 parking spaces in the cellar for HPD inspection vehicles that are replacing the existing use on site there. Next up, we have 1134 Pacific Street. This is a previously city-owned site. It's 19,000 square feet. It was disposed by the city to a nonprofit, Acacia Network, in the 1980s for a rehabilitation project. HPD is now working closely with Acacia Network. They're a social service provider, affordable housing developer, and we're working with them to reactivate the site. There are a few land use actions being proposed here. HPD will be doing a site-specific acquisition and disposition to allow us to reacquire the site, remove an existing deed restriction, and then transfer it back to Acacia to build affordable housing. And then 1110 Atlantic is a 26,000 square foot lot that's owned by the city and actually leased by the New York City Transit Authority. It currently has a cable repair shop on site, as well as storage, and it's right by the Franklin Avenue shuttle, as you can see in the image. The city is proposing acquisition and disposition to allow for future development here, and we're in discussions with the MTA about the affordable housing potential for the site. And then last but not least, our 6th site is 457 Nostrand Avenue in Community District 3 in Bed-Stuy. All the other sites were in Community District 8, Crown Heights. So this is a 30,000 square foot parking lot that's owned by the Department of Education, just adjacent to their Brooklyn Adult Learning Center and Adult Education Center. The Learning Center will remain on site, but we're working with the Department of Education to explore redevelopment of the parking lot on the site. And the proposal is to rezone the site to R72 and dispose of the site to facilitate between 160 to 200 affordable homes, as well as community facility space for New York City public schools. We're also working really closely with the Landmarks Preservation Commission here, given that the site is within the Bedford Historic District, so there will be future Landmarks Preservation Commission review there. Okay, So, we talked about creating new affordable housing. Now we're going to dive into talking about strategies to preserve existing affordable homes. Some of really kind of like the key issues and themes that came up in all of our conversations were around the need to prevent displacement and harassment, and these are major goals of this plan. I do want to highlight a few of our key tenant protection initiatives that we'll be advancing here. The first is Partners in Preservation. This is HPD's new anti-displacement program that is going to include a $3 million commitment to fund local central Brooklyn community-based organizations. Their work here is really about combating landlord harassment and displacement through supporting tenant organizing and coalition building, really focused on rent regulated or rent stabilized buildings and other high risk buildings or buildings with large populations of kind of tenants at risk of displacement. I would also call out that through this process, there's been a very strong call for legal services to hold landlords accountable. And the anti-harassment and tenant protection program is actually going to have a $7 million reinstatement of funding that was recently committed through the City of Yes for Housing Opportunity Commitments. And these are going to be legal services that address housing violations, tenant harassment, eviction proceedings, and affirmative cases. I also want to point out that we'll be partnering with community-based organizations and elected officials to organize a range of kind of educational programs for tenants. These are things like Know Your Rights trainings, housing resource fairs, and we actually have a series coming up in spring 2025 that you should all stay tuned for a series of classes and clinics and a housing resource fair, which we'll have more info about soon. But we'll include things like a class about housing lottery and tenants' rights.
Thank you. That's all the time we have for the presentation.
Okay, this is the last slide. Can I do that?
Quickly, sure.
Sure. Okay, so our last slide here is around our strategies to support homeowners, where really the goal is to prevent displacement for low-income homeowners, specifically folks, really at risk of deed theft and scams and other challenges navigating home ownership. Some of the key strategies here are the city's renewed investments in our $10 million citywide homeowner help desk. That's a one-stop shop for homeowners that are facing foreclosure, tax liens, deed theft, and maintenance issues, working with local community-based organizations in the area. We also recently relaunched our Home Fix program for low or no interest loans up to $60,000 for home repairs in exchange for affordability restrictions. And that's now serving 3 times as many households with up to 450 households per year. And then the third kind of critical piece here is education, offering classes and resources to homeowners. In spring 2025, our series that I mentioned with classes will include deed theft and navigating home ownership for homeowners. And we also have a new online guide called the Guide for New York City Homeowners that has all of HPD's programs and resources for homeowners all in one place. Recommend you check it out. And yeah, that is it.
Thank you. So as we stated, because it's a public hearing, any members of the public who wish to testify first can do so. We also have written testimonies that can be emailed to us at testimony@brooklynbp.nyc.gov. It's on our notice, and we will be taking testimonies until Friday, January 10th, 2025 at 5 p.m. So any members of the public? Seeing none. Any board members that have any questions, comments, or concerns? Chair Witherspoon and then Chair Busa. If you want to do a testimony, you can go up if you want. Sure. Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you, everyone. I'm Irsa Weatherspoon from Community Board 8. And I just wanted to just say that we at Community Board 8 support the aim up with conditions. This is a plan that started 10 years ago with our M1 Crown process that was mentioned. I'm happy that we have been able to agree on a holistic plan that we believe supports some of the needs of our district. For example, the rezoning to accommodate more affordable housing. Also, hopefully, HPD's commitment to develop those identified sites for hopefully 100% affordability. A streetscape plan to increase safety for all users, tenant and landlord protections and support. Also, a dedicated workforce development program and a green technology incubator that those measures will increase job employment and encourage MWBE entrepreneurship. We think that's important. And we are concerned about our open space. So we are really hesitant to really offer, what can I say, the zoning bonuses, because we are concerned about shadows and we don't want to contribute to shadows and loss of air. And that's what I want to say. Thank you so much.
Chair Buseris.
Thank you so much. First, Anthony Buseris, Chair of Community Board 3. First, I want to say I want to thank our colleagues in 8 for having the forethought to think about neighborhood planning. We were brought into the process closer to 2022 as part of this plan. We did also vote to support this with conditions. One of our biggest concerns was about open space. I think that Bed-Stuy has the second lowest percentage of open space in the borough. And so that was one thing that we really pushed for. And I'm glad that there was some sort of accommodation that could come for that. And we also, as part of our conditions, we want to encourage folks to get the developers to agree to do a maintenance fund to ensure that the area is maintained at a certain standard. Also think that I just want to share with the other chairs, I think we should all be mindful that the developers are coming, especially for our corridors. And the best way for us to get ahead of this is to have community input from the front end so we can set context. Is AIM up perfect? I'm not going to say that. I think there are many members of our board who have some pushback on that, but it's better than spot rezonings that are happening in the neighborhood. As Jonah said, there have been, since 2019, there have been 7 that came up in the area. So hopefully, moving forward, we can go further east on Atlantic Avenue and working with 8 and potentially 16 on that, because we understand that Atlantic Avenue is a potential area of growth. And it also is a significant corridor for our city's commerce as its access to JFK. So just want to advise you all to consider thinking about your corridors and a way to protect them and also have community input.
Thank you. Do you have any other board members who would like to speak? Seeing none, we will move on with our agenda. We want to thank you guys at AIMUP for presenting to us. We have other reports. CB13, you had a report for us. Just please wait for the mic. Thank you.
Yes, I'm Jenny Hernandez from CB13. So this Thursday, January 9th, CB13 will be hosting a meeting about the proposed Coney Island Casino Street demapping. And we encourage everyone to attend as this will be affecting our entire borough. Land Use Committee meeting will be on January 15th and followed by a full board vote at the general board meeting on January 22nd. We will forward this information to the BPO as this project will come before this board in the future. If you need a copy of the notice, I have them with me as well. And I would also like to add that I would like to abstain for the December minutes. You know, I tried to raise my hand earlier. That would be all. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other business or announcements from our Borough Board members? Chairperson Morgan?
Good evening. I just wanted to share that Brooklyn Community Board 16 has a new district manager as of January 6, 2025. Many of you know we were without a district manager for 25 months. Yes. So yesterday started a new day. And I am thrilled to have a district manager in place. And so I just wanted to thank the members of Borough Hall for their support over that time, and thank the other board members and our board members from CB16, as well as Ms. Brewer, who's here. I'm grateful, who was like my right hand during that time. And because I write with my left hand, so she was my right hand. The other chairpersons and boards that were supportive during that time. I know that we went through a really difficult time after having someone in place for a 44-year period and then transitioned out. So 2 years to transition is not, that long of a time when you're kind of trying to rebound or you're rebuilding after 44 years. But it was a learning experience, a great learning experience. And it did take a lot of support from the Borough Board as well as other community boards in order for us to get to this point. And so I just want to publicly thank you all for your assistance, your support, and your patience during that time. And I am going to be transitioning off the board. And so Ms. Margaret Brewer, you'll see her a little bit more. You'll see Ms. Deborah Williams, who's our second vice. Margaret's our first, Deborah's our second. You'll see them a little bit more as I transition off and kind of get folks used to me not being around. And so I just ask that you all work with them and give them the same support that you've given me over the years. And so thank you.
Thank you and congratulations. Do you have any other member updates? We have Chairperson Baptiste.
Yeah, my apologies. Is this other business right now or?
Other business, yeah.
Okay. Just two items. One, first of all, Happy New Year to everyone. It's great to see everyone. Two items that I wanted to put for the Borough Board to consider as we're going, I guess, into the second half of our year. One, I do think that, again, going back to the attendance issue we had before, it may be good for us to make sure that we have a working group or have conversations with respects to the bylaws for the Borough Board in terms of how we function and if there's any disciplinary actions we can or cannot do. But I think it's important that we perhaps start that conversation. The other thing I also wanted to bring up for consideration as well is that I believe the open meetings law, some of the provisions that were approved in the last budget, a couple of budgets ago, are getting ready to sunset, and those conversations are happening in Albany. And I think it may be helpful for us as a Borough Board to take a position or to begin to develop a position with respect to that as well, in terms of how hybrid meetings would fit in our community board meetings and all other public meetings for the city. So I'm just offering that as something we should perhaps be working on over the next couple of months. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any other business? We have a motion to adjourn. Okay. Witherspoon and then Baptiste. Thank you, guys.